Hey everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hello and welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. Maritza here. I hope today is one of those days where you hear something on this show that shifts you into some positive change. Today on the podcast, we open up a conversation about drinking and our relationship with alcohol with Kathryn Elliott. Kathryn works as a certified alcohol mindset coach and has been living alcohol-free since July 2019. And as a self-proclaimed former binge drinker for over 30 years, she coaches from lived experience and believes vulnerability and sharing our own stories is one of the most powerful tools in healing and finding a more balanced relationship with alcohol. This episode is for you if you want to look more closely at your alcohol mindset and the way that you drink, especially if it's not serving you and making you live as your best self. It's also for you if you have changed the way you drink or stopped drinking and want to learn ways to communicate your new lifestyle choices to those around you and still remain social. This is such a great chat with so many insights that I think lots of us will get a lot from. We also chat to Kathryn about her breast cancer diagnosis and the direct links she has found between drinking alcohol and breast cancer, plus the choosing to remain alcohol-free during the period of recovery being a catalyst to further healing and growth. So I look forward to diving in with you, and as always, please let me know what you think and what insights that you pulled from this. Just before we jump in, just a quick note to say I love sharing these inspirational voices on this show and also on the many other podcasts that I help to produce on the Guide Your Light Network, which has just launched and I'm very thrilled about. So if you feel as though you have something important to say and don't know where to start to bring that to life, reach out to me to chat. I can help you bring your voice to life, from finding your confidence, learning how to craft your message, and finally, even perhaps launching season 1 of your very own podcast. I share my voice so that you can share yours. Welcome, Kathryn Elliott, to Things You Can't Unhear.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Brace yourself, everyone. We are definitely going to be discussing things you can't unhear today on this episode with Kathryn. I'm a big fan of your work. I've stumbled across you through a friend, and I noticed on your social media profiles that there are quite a few people that we have in common with our friendship groups. And I thought, well, if Mark Cluer knows Kathryn and if Aisling Quigley knows Kathryn, then I need to know Kathryn too.
Yeah, two legends right there.
They've both been on this podcast, and yes, they are two absolute legends. So yeah, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to just to having a chat. Love it.
So on the front of your website, on the first page of your website, there's a list of questions, and I'm going to actually read them out for everyone today to really preface this conversation. And just if you find yourself nodding and thinking yes to any of these questions, just tune in and take a listen to this episode, because I think it will be a lot of help to you. So the questions on your website: have you tried to cut back on your levels of drinking but have not been successful? Has alcohol made you behave in a way you regret or hurt those you love? Do you regularly try to limit your number of drinks on a night out but end up binging again? Are you always chasing the next drink and can't seem to find an off switch? Do you wake up in the middle of the night after drinking with anxiety and shame, wondering how you ended up here again? Have you blacked out or fallen over because of your drinking? And has your drinking isolated you from some of your friends? Kathryn, huge questions, and I'm sure many people are nodding right now.
Yeah, absolutely huge questions. And those questions have really come through my own experience of a 30-year, binge drinking pattern, which ended up being, very destructive for me and my feelings about myself.
Can you tell us when you identified that you had a problem and your journey into the work that you do today as an alcohol mindset coach?
Yeah, sure. I think it's hard to find the precise moment when I thought I had a problem. I think it was a slow creep. Initially, what started as, I guess, a binge drinking pattern in my teenage years grew very quickly into a binge pattern that I couldn't drop in my 20s and 30s and 40s. I sort of felt like I was going to grow out of my binge drinking pattern, and it never happened. And I guess I noticed in my own drinking that there was a compulsion when I was drinking. I just could not stop when I wanted to. And I often ended up drinking a lot more than I wanted to. I was the last to leave a lot of events. And then I got into a really negative, I guess, cycle of I'd feel so guilty and ashamed about it the next day that I would make myself get up early and exercise and eat well and punish myself for the drinking. So this was a cycle that I practiced for a long period of time. And it wasn't something I shared a lot with other people, because I looked around at the people that I was socializing with and hanging out with, and generally they were all binge drinking themselves. I don't know exactly what their thought processes were when they got home or the next day, but I was very much in the company of people who were drinking in a similar way. And as a woman or a young girl of 16, 17, 18, my drinking became very much hooked up with my identity, because I had received a lot of positive affirmation around my drinking and the fact that I could hold a lot of alcohol for a female, and that it was great that I could keep up with the boys. And so I very much developed this positive association with my drinking, which in a way then I guess meant that I felt like I had to live up to this, I guess, this persona. And I also had nicknames. I was given nicknames about my drinking. So one of them was Camel and one of them was the Fish. And, this all became part of, as I said, my identity. And, when I guess I decided to really look at my relationship with alcohol, which was when I was 46, I guess, I had to unpack all of this identity stuff, because it felt really strange to think of myself as being someone potentially who wasn't going to drink anymore. And I think in terms of just looping back to this question around, when did it become problematic, and this notion of it slowly creeping up, I guess for me, it was just this constant chattering in my head for a period of time around my drinking, questions being asked, not being able to stop when I wanted to. It affected some of my relationships and friendships, because I was behaving sometimes in a way when I was drinking that I wasn't proud of. And so this was all just building up over time. And I guess on the other side, there was this person who was very committed to their health, who was into yoga and meditation and exercise and eating healthily. So I had these two sides, and my drinking was undermining this, I guess, the person that I really wanted to be. But I didn't really know how to stop or what to do, whether or not I did have a problem, because to me, what I'd seen really out in public as someone who had a problem with alcohol was not someone I could identify with. What I saw was, well, the only people who you see who ever really highlighted as having a problem with alcohol are people who are drinking out of a bottle with a paper bag, who've been kicked out of home and are on a park bench. And so I sort of thought to myself, well, I don't think I've got a problem. I don't drink daily. I often take a month away from drinking. So is it really a problem? And it was, I guess, in April of 2019, I had a really awful experience on a family holiday where my three sons and husband were out with another family, and I drank a number of cocktails quite quickly and ended up just not remembering how I got home, blacked out, fell and hit my head in front of my kids. And it was just mortifying and embarrassing. And I guess that was the moment for me where I went out the next day and sat on the beach and just looked out across the water and really reflected and thought, something has to change. You're not happy. This is not who you want to be. And it was then that I really made a decision that I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before, which was to take an extended break away from drinking without a date to go back. I didn't stop right then and there, but I didn't have a binge again. And I decided that my date to stop drinking was going to be the 1st of July 2019. And that happened. And I've chosen to remain alcohol free ever since.
That is an amazing story. I'm curious, Kathryn, did your relationships change around you when you stopped drinking? Because, you said you surrounded yourself, you were in friendship groups where everyone was sort of doing the same thing, and the weekend would roll around, or Tuesday afternoon, whatever day it was. And, everyone would get together and then the drinks would start flowing. So if you stopped that part of your social activity, did that change the people that you began to hang around and the way that you lived your life, I suppose?
Yeah, it was such an interesting period of life for me, because I chose to stop drinking in July 2019. And then 6 weeks later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I found a lump in my breast. And then pretty much 6 to 8 months after that, we were in lockdown and the pandemic hit. So it was a really crazy period for me. And so even looking at how it affected relationships is interesting, because we weren't in a normal 2 years of life in a way. There weren't nearly as many social situations. We were cut off from friends and family for quite a long period. But what I did notice, I guess, in the first few months was that the breast cancer diagnosis was probably, in a way, it gave me a really good excuse not to be drinking alcohol and for no one to question why I wasn't drinking, I guess. Because of course, when I was going through, chemotherapy and surgery and radiation treatment. So I think for most people, they could understand that, I'd chosen not to drink and had a pretty good reason for not drinking. But before I was diagnosed with cancer, in that sort of 6 weeks leading up to, I had started to go out to some social functions, not drinking, and I actually felt really good, I have to say. Although it's initially a tiny little bit uncomfortable, I loved the way that I felt. I loved the fact that I felt present, that I still really enjoyed myself, and that I had control. And so that sort of felt quite positive. And we did have some friends over who were also quite, who were drinking, and I was the only one who wasn't drinking. And I found that was okay. I guess if I'm looking back now, it's over 3 years since I've drunk. Definitely our big drinking or partying friends are really not part of our lives overly much anymore. I think COVID also changed the way we socialized as well, and gave us almost an excuse not to go back intentionally unless we really wanted to. And so I guess for me, the relationships with some friends have changed, but with some friends, they've grown even closer, because we're looking at and we're doing other activities that aren't centered around alcohol, which is really good.
I love that. And you know what I really love? That you stayed social, well, in that time that you could before lockdown and your illness, but you stayed social and you've become social again, because I feel like a lot of people who I talk to, they tend to just sort of pull away from social activities because they don't want to put themselves in those situations where they're going to be offered a drink, or they have to explain themselves that they aren't drinking, or they don't want to drink today, or, explain any of why they're not accepting that drink when someone offers it to them.
Which can be very isolating, I think, and which is why then people find it really hard to lead the lifestyle, because they're cutting themselves off from, their community and their friends. And I guess when I'm working with people on their relationship with alcohol and they are social, I really do encourage them to continue to step into those environments. But we work out, plans on how to best support them to do that, which might be preparing the people who they're socializing with, to let them know that, they're not drinking, or to come up with, messaging that they feel comfortable to talk about with friends. A lot of people now use alcohol-free drinks to support them. Some find those triggering, so some don't use them. But, there's lots of tools and techniques that you can bring in to really help support you to still socialize, because it is such an important part of, all of our lives. And if you feel cut off from that, or you don't feel accepted or supported, it can be really difficult.
I'm really curious to jump into some of those tips with you soon, but I wanted to just go back just a minute to touch on your diagnosis with breast cancer. You obviously had a massive few years. All of us had a massive couple of years, but you've just really had the works, haven't you? So what I found interesting with what research I did about you is that you found that there were links between breast cancer and excessive alcohol consumption in your studies and in your research. Can you tell us a little bit about that so that we have that awareness as well?
Yeah, sure. So for me, the question that came up for me when I was diagnosed was, has my binge drinking, I guess, had any played any contribution to this diagnosis, or is there any link? And I didn't really know the answer to that. So I decided to do some of my own research. And what I found was quite shocking, in that it's not actually excessive alcohol consumption, it's low to moderate drinking that increases your breast cancer risk. So even 7 drinks a week, which is 1 drink a day, increases your overall breast cancer risk between 10 and 14%. And with every additional drink that you have a day, your breast cancer risk is increased. So I was really shocked and surprised that I hadn't seen more public health messaging around this. And I started to ask, friends and family whether they knew about it. And most people didn't. Most people had no idea that there was a direct link, and that their general thought was, oh, well, you really have to have a genetic link to get breast cancer. And if there was anything connected with alcohol, would have to be really excessive drinking. And, the more reading that I've done, there are now even, some recent research that is looking at drinking during teenage years. So between when you get your first period, and then if you have a child, your first pregnancy, that drinking in that period of your life can actually affect your overall breast cancer risk. And, I was doing a hell of a lot of drinking over that period. So it'll be interesting to see what some of these new studies start to show. But I think, the main point to get across to people is that every drink that you choose not to have will reduce your overall breast cancer risk. And I think that's really powerful. Even
It is.
if we to have a day away from drinking, or we choose to drink 1 or 2 drinks less when we do, it's helpful to remember that.
And yes, I like that you say that, because there's no point in going into fear mode and saying, okay, what have I done in my past that is going to potentially be causing illnesses in the future, and putting yourself down that negative spiral. But yes, what we do have control over is what we do from this point onwards.
Absolutely. And I'm a big believer in that. It's not about making people feel guilty about drinking. I'm very much a person who I think it's everyone's responsibility in life to do and make their own choices. I think it's really important that we make choices and have the information that we need to make more educated choices, which is why, I really like to bring this issue out into the public a bit more around breast cancer and alcohol consumption.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an important message that you are sharing. So from this point, you've stopped drinking, you now have regained your health and recovered from breast cancer, thankfully. And you now are an alcohol mindset coach. So you help other people on their journey to, correct certain behaviors that they no longer want around alcohol. So when people come to you, what are the first steps that you guide them through? And how do we, like, if someone's listening now, they've got that voice in their head, they're like, right, this is just resonating with me so much, and I really don't know how to start, when to start. What are some of the first steps that we can take to identify if we even have a problem in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I guess identifying whether you've got a problem, it's really unique to each person, to be honest. And a lot of it is actually relying on your inner knowing and the questioning that's going on in your own head. But some common questions that will come up are that, you're feeling regret, you're feeling shame, you're feeling anxiety, you're having issues limiting your drinking, you're trying to put rules and regulations around your drinking, you can't stop at just one or two, you're starting to think about drinking more and more. But really, it's actually a feeling. It's a feeling if you're feeling kind of consumed around the thoughts around your drinking, and that there's a lot of energy going into, thinking about drinking, recovering from drinking, whether or not you're drinking as much or as someone else. These are, when it's taking up kind of brain space, and it's been doing that for a period in time, and it's starting to drain you as well. You're starting to feel really drained by it. That's when it's really time to start to do some work on it. And it doesn't necessarily mean, you need to see a coach. There might be an opportunity to do some reading. There are some fantastic resources out there now. This Naked Mind by Annie Grace was the first book that I picked up and read, and I found that really useful. And then there are plenty of memoirs as well about other people's experiences. There are lots of podcasts that people can listen to now. So often that's a really great place to start, just to start listening in and seeing what if your story resonates with other people's as well. And it's also about being more mindful about your drinking and realizing that sometimes we can get into very unconscious drinking habits as well. So stepping back and slowing down and just starting to ask yourself some questions about your drinking and whether or not you even need to have a second drink so quickly, and whether you can just have a non-alcoholic drink instead of an alcoholic drink. You have an alcoholic and then a non-alcoholic, an alcoholic and then a non-alcoholic. And even just taking a week away from drinking can be really useful, because sometimes we don't know how dependent on something we are until we take it away. So even if you don't necessarily think you've got a problem with drinking, it's a really interesting experiment to say, okay, I'm going to take 2 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks away from alcohol, just see where the triggers are and what comes up for you emotionally.
What about the language we use? I find language fascinating and very important in anything that we do. But the language that we use when it comes to if people ask us if we'd like a drink or how we respond to that, what you suggest in those circumstances.
Is this a question if someone asks you and you're not drinking?
Yeah.
Often with clients, one of the techniques we use is to say, yes, I'd love a drink. I'd love a mineral water, please. So rather than saying, no, I'm not drinking and having that negative bias, it's about owning it and being positive about what you're doing, or bringing your own drinks with you, which can be really useful, so that then you're prepared. The biggest thing that really, I guess, one of the things that people find very difficult initially is that if they're not prepared and something comes out of the blue, as someone offers them a drink and they kind of take it, or they haven't had time to really come up with what they want to say, or they've got friends who, start to heckle them a bit. So we do a lot of work, I guess, on looking at, okay, what would you say to a friend? Mostly it's about being really firm with your boundaries and saying, my health hasn't been great and I'm taking time away from drinking. I'd like you to respect my decision, full stop. It's when people feel that we're not enjoying the choice or the decision that we've made. So if we go, oh no, I'm not drinking, it's such a pain, or I'm finding it really hard, that's when someone will try and come in and try and encourage you to drink. So it's really about owning and taking responsibility.
What I hear a lot of for people who are not drinking is that they get called boring by their friends who are drinking. Is there a comeback? Is there language around that? Have you also heard that come up?
Oh, this is a big one. It's a big one. And I know for me that when I was drinking, I used to look at people who chose not to drink or didn't drink, and I thought they were boring, not fun. I sort of used to steer clear from them, to be honest.
Mm.
And you know what I now know to be true is that drinkers can be really boring when they're drunk.
So true.
You
But
know,
also, if you are drunk, you don't want to be around a sober person because you are going to look stupid 100% of the time.
Exactly. And it's not, and look, I don't think it's not one of those when you're drinking, and I know remembering my own sort of, you know, mindset and approach to people who weren't drinking, you're not going to change people's people's thoughts. The only thing you can do really is act and be your own advocate in terms of you show people the way it's done. So you go to parties still, you have fun, you're present, you have great conversations, and people see that you're in a good place around your own behavior, and they can see that you're still having fun socially, that you're not drinking. And I think that's the way. You just do it through your own actions rather than trying to tell people that, you know, no, you're not boring, or that, you know, not drinking is boring. I think it's just about living the lifestyle, and the more people that are doing it, the more I think it will become more accepted, I think. In Australian culture, for sure.
Yeah. You touched on something earlier about when you said you were catching up with friends and you found new activities to do together that wasn't circling around drinking. So can you tell us some of those so that people can go, you know what, I do still want to be social, but I don't want to sit at a bar with my friends, because then that will become old and boring for me after an hour or so, because, you know, everyone's just knocking them back and I don't want to be around that. So what other activities do you get up to, or, you know, how can you catch up with friends and shift the narrative, I suppose?
Yeah, sure. So generally I now catch up with friends during the day, and we'll do something active. So it'll be, you know, we'll go for walks, we'll go for a hike, we'll go out and have brunch rather than lunch or dinner, so that there's no, you know, kind of alcohol involved. So those things have been really useful. Or go and do a Pilates or a yoga class. Or particularly with girlfriends, I found that even during lockdown and COVID, because you got into that pattern of going for walks, it's become a really nice way to catch up with people. And I'm also very comfortable now having dinner and going to dinner and parties without drinking alcohol. The thing is, I just don't stay as long as I used to, because it gets to a certain point in the night where I'm done. You know, everyone else might be drinking more, and it's like the level of connection is kind of, it's finished, because you can't really relate to people as well. So I love the fact that I can just leave and drive everywhere now. And my husband now doesn't drink either. So we're always there to support each other generally too, which is really good.
And you know you're going to feel fresh in the morning too, right?
Absolutely. So this is a really great technique that I work through with clients, is playing the tape forward. So often our drinking memory often only focuses on that initial feeling of having a drink, and we get that dopamine hit and we feel, you know, a little bit warm and fuzzy. But play the tape forward. You know, what happens 5 drinks, 6 drinks later? What happens when you get home? What happens when you wake up in the middle of the night? What happens when you've got a hangover the next day? And so when you play the tape forward, you often get a more realistic picture of where your drinking will lead to. And for me, absolutely, the benefits of the next day, and knowing that I fully trust myself, I trust the plans I make, I can get up early the next morning, do exercise, meet friends, whatever it is, and whatever plans I've got, I love the fact that I can make the most of every day that I have.
Yeah, I love that too. I think making early morning plans the next day is a good thing too. And knowing you're going to be there and knowing you're going to be fresh and you're doing that walk or that hike, and it's, you know, not going to feel sick halfway up a mountain, for example. So and, you know, I think the big thing is for me with hangovers or excessive drinking or feeling that way is the feeling of wasting a day or two in recovery mode. That is always the big thing for me. And I don't excessively drink. I'll socially drink, and you know, I don't go past a certain level of drinks. I sort of keep the control there, so I know that I've had a few drinks, I've socialized, but I know I'm still not going to, it's not going to affect my following day or
Yeah,
the day
yeah,
after that or the day
yeah,
after that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, one of the the huge lessons that I got through breast cancer when I was going through that experience was, I guess, at the age of 46, which I was when I was diagnosed, I wasn't expecting to start to question, my mortality. And I did. And I had this absolutely, I guess, I had a dream one night where it was like death came to me in my dream, and she was a woman, and it was really beautiful. It was like there was this acceptance that we all die, and that I felt this real sense of relief. I knew that it wasn't my time to go, but there was this, when I woke up the next day, there was this real feeling of, I want to live my life intentionally, and I'm going to make more intentional choices about how I live, what I choose to do, how I choose to work, who I choose to be around. And my relationship with alcohol was exactly the same. Alcohol took me away from being present in my life and active and creative and productive. I thought I was highly productive and creative when I was drinking, but it wasn't until I took drinking away that I realized how active and productive I could really be, and how intentional I could be, and how the relationship with myself has continued to expand. Because when I was drinking, I was actually suppressing a whole lot of energy and emotions from a long period of time. So when I stopped drinking, I started to grieve a lot of stuff from my past. And that was part of the healing through cancer, was not only physical, it was also hugely emotional. It was like there was this rebirth out the other side that was really, I guess, it was turned up. It was turned up because I wasn't drinking. So it was quite a transformational experience, I have to say. And I see both the choice to stop drinking, and the breast cancer diagnosis coming so close together. It was kind of like those two things have now led me to do the work that I'm doing. So in a way, they've both been gifts that I've learned from, and I've been able to, start to do some really, proactive and positive things now in my life, which I absolutely love. Every day now, I feel really connected with a purpose in life, which I didn't have before.
Mm. I love that you brought up the reason why a lot of people drink is to squash things that they don't want to feel. And it's almost like that self-medicating, that those squashing those emotions, getting rid of, I'm going to go out and drink tonight so I don't have to think about the pain that I'm feeling. That is another side of drinking that a lot of us don't think about. And the next day, you start, that's when those feelings can even be multiplied and amplified even more when you're feeling horrible, and those feelings start to re-emerge again of things that you potentially are squashing when you're drinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think, for a lot of us, we're not really taught how to feel. And when anything becomes really uncomfortable, one of the ways we try to avoid it is to drink or use other substances, or shopping or busyness or whatever it may be. And so often when you take alcohol out of your life, it can be really uncomfortable as you start to feel things that you have not felt before. It can be a little overwhelming. And it can also be a little, it can be really confronting, because some stuff can come up from the past that you may not have thought about for a long period of time. And it's really, I like to think of it as, the body is giving permission and feels like it can start to release things that have been pushed down for a long period of time. And that alcohol's not sitting there kind of numbing our feelings and emotions. And once it's not there, we are feeling it. And a lot of work I do with clients is on actually not feeling that that's a negative thing. Like, they're negative and positive emotions, are there? I mean, we're all humans experiencing so much in life. Some of the emotions that we feel, we make them negative, but they're actually not. They're allowing them and not resisting them is really important.
Mm.
And that's, I've done quite a bit of work on that as well, the shadow side of ourselves, which is also super important to accept as, part of who we are.
The deep layers of who we are, right?
Yeah.
Now, you strike me as quite an intuitive person, and someone who knows yourself quite deeply these days. Have you used your intuition to guide you on decisions that you've made over these difficult 3 years, or these transformational, we should call it, 3 years of your life?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I definitely got a download when I was in the shower on the day that I found the lump in my breast. I mean, basically, I was having a shower, I was in my head, I was busy, I was getting ready for work. And all of a sudden, I got this message to just slow down and take some deep breaths and then go and look at your body in the mirror in the bedroom. And that's what I did. And that's when I found the lump. So it was kind of, insane. And then I also, in the first couple of weeks of diagnosis, the messages that I tapped into from my intuition was, you have to embrace this as a learning experience. It's going to give you lots of positives. And so that for me, and I didn't want to be, the other thing that came to me intuitively was, I didn't want to be viewed as unwell or sick. I wanted to be viewed as a vibrant woman who had a breast cancer diagnosis. And so that's, I communicated all of that to my friends and family as well. And I tap into my intuition every day, really, and ask questions. I go out into nature and ask Mother Nature questions and get responses. So I do very much now tap into it. And I think the communication, I feel like there's this sixth sense that we don't tap into enough, which is our intuition. And when we're drinking alcohol, our ability to connect with our inner knowing and that sixth sense is cut off or not nearly as strong. So I feel like I'm so much more in tune with that now. Like, I feel like the frequency that your body goes to when you're not drinking, at a cellular level, we're all energy, and alcohol is not good overall for our energy. So if being connected to your intuition and you have, a spiritual practice is really important, then alcohol is going to numb and keep you disconnected from that. It won't completely keep you disconnected, but if it's really important, a priority in your life, taking alcohol or reducing alcohol in your life, it's almost like things go into a completely different, a different vibration, which is what I found in my own life. And people have noticed it in me. They notice it in just my energy and presence, but also in, the choices and the way that I, intentionally live my life now. And I feel it, like I feel it in myself. It's like I've come home to myself, and that I have this trust in myself that I never had before.
You sort of make me excited to not drink.
Good.
You make it sound actually exciting and positive and, uplifting. And that's how we should be viewing it if they're the choices that we're wanting to make.
Yeah, no, look, for me, I can only talk from personal experience, and I have many other friends and coaching friends who don't drink. But I think a lot of people think they're going to be missing out on so much by choosing not to drink. And, for me, I cannot explain the gains that it's just so many. And I think, the biggest gain for me has just been the connection with myself, really, and the self-belief and the capacity to do so much more in life. And I never realized that alcohol was holding me back. And it really was.
And that you're paying it forward to other people, which is pretty special.
Oh, well, absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, I love the work that I do and the coaching. I generally coach, my niche is really, professional men and women who've identified, I guess, as functioning binge drinkers. And when you hold space for someone, when they get an opportunity to talk about, their issues with drinking, they get to make a plan around each week around what they're going to do differently, when they've got accountability, when they feel supported. It's amazing the changes that can happen in a short amount of time. And, I never tell clients that they have to stop drinking or that they must have not, alcohol-free days in a week. All clients come to me with their own intention of how they want to feel around their relationship with alcohol. And that may be about having some time away from drinking. It might be stopping drinking, but it might also be, having a few alcohol-free days in their week. It really depends. And so for me, it's actually about them and helping them feel better and more in control and more free generally.
Yeah, amazing. We'll put links to your website and your programs up on the show notes so that people, if they are interested, if they do have that voice in their head right now and they want to know more and connect with you, they will be very able to do that via those links. But I do ask everyone this question on the show. The name of the show is Things You Can't Unhear.
Yep.
So is there something that you have heard once in a book, during a conversation, on a podcast, whatever it was, something that you read perhaps, that sparked positive change within you, that really shifted you as a person?
Yeah, look, I think for me, I'm not sure how many years ago it was. I went to see Johann Hari talk, the author of Lost Connections. And it was such a powerful conversation. And I was still drinking at the time, but I remember him talking about, the opposite of addiction is connection. And that always stayed with me, that it is actually about community and connection, and that our attitude to addiction is to isolate often, or to shame, or to put people away. And so I always remember that people are so much more than an addiction or a drinking problem, and that the way out of a lot of these issues is actually love, community, compassion, connection. Yeah.
Wow, what a great saying. The opposite of addiction is connection. I wrote that down on an old little receipt that I have sitting in front of me, which I will transfer to paper properly and share that around. I love that. Thank you so much, Kathryn, for your time today. So much great insight, amazing stories that you shared about yourself that really let us sort of engage and understand what it felt like from your point of view. And I'm sure many listening today connected with that quite deeply and saw an element of themselves in parts of your story. And, this is why we do what we do, right? We have these conversations so that we can help other people and, amplify their lives in a way that you feel like yours is now.
Yeah, absolutely, Maritza. Thank you so much. I mean, I think I'm a really big believer that, in sharing our vulnerability and our stories, that absolutely is where we, connect as humans. And often there's too much of, not sharing the real gritty parts of our humanness. And so I think, it's beautiful that you're giving people the opportunity to do that through your podcast. So
thank you. I always get so excited with these deep conversations that we have on the show. So thank you so much again, Kathryn. I can't wait to share this interview and chat to our listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.